When you're ready.
Hi everybody, my name is Elie.
My name's Sylvia.
My name's Lauren.
And this is our stem cell therapy presentation. Our group researched the question, are stem cell therapies effective? And we came to the conclusion that they are, but we found some implications.
So the main lenses that we went through is I researched the scientific lens.
I researched the ethical lens.
And I did futuristic.
So in looking through the scientific lens, the main questions that led my research were what are stem cells and why are they so important? And to get a better understanding and basis for the rest of our lenses in the research, first I'm going to be talking about what stem cells even are. They have two very important capabilities that make them stand out. They can renew and regenerate, allowing them to multiply when needed, and they can also differentiate, meaning that they can essentially turn into any other type of cell. And as you can see in the image, a single cell can either replicate itself or it can turn into all these types of things. So keeping their importance in mind, there are two main groups of these stem cells. The first is the pluripotent stem cell, which has two subcategories, embryonic and induced pluripotent. Embryonic cells come from blastocysts, small balls of cells found during the first stages of embryonic development and can become any type of cell in the adult body. As you can see, the embryonic cells are removed and cultured in a lab, and based on the culture conditions, they can turn into other things like nerve cells or even whole organs. And Ellie's going to talk more about this later. So in the other type, induced pluripotent cells are generated in a lab, but other than that are very similar to embryonic cells. The second type is tissue-specific stem cells, also referred to as somatic or adult stem cells. These cells are found in adult organs or tissues and are more specialized, meaning that they can kind of do more things than other types of cells. And also, as you can see in these two, they can either regenerate and turn into, or they can turn into other types of cells. So why are they important? Scientists can use these cells to watch the development of diseases and to test new medicines and treatments. Being able to do this without using a human patient is what makes stem cells so important, because they can test new innovative things without having to worry about putting a human patient in danger. Another thing that they can do is that they can be tailored to each individual, so that they can, since most of the time stem cells come from your own body most of the time, there's a much lower risk of rejection, which makes them really useful in treatments. And for stem cell therapy, scientists are able to generate healthy cells to replace cells affected by disease. So Ellie's going to be talking about that.
For my lens, I researched three main questions. My first question is, are human embryos morally equivalent to a person? Many argue that it is unethical to extract stem cells from the embryo because it destroys the blastocyst, what Sylvia talked about earlier. But these stem cells develop in petri dishes, which is what that is, not inside a womb, which means that they don't develop organs or tissues that humans have. I don't believe that this is unethical because a clump of cells shouldn't be considered morally equivalent to a human being. However, I do agree that embryos have some type of moral status because in the womb they are living things. But since they don't have the potential to grow into human beings, I don't consider them the same as a human. Keeping this in mind, I wondered if there were other stem cells that weren't ethically problematic, which brings me to my next question. There is another type of stem cell, the human-induced pluripotent stem cell, which also Sylvia defined earlier. These are an effective replacement because they aren't killing the embryo, but instead they are genetically reprogrammed adult stem cells. In contrast, there are complications to these. For example, them not becoming cancerous after being transplanted into the patient, and their unlimited capacity for differentiation, which Sylvia described earlier, which basically means that they could lead to human cloning. The FDA has also not approved this type of stem cell yet because their safety hasn't been ensured and they're still being developed. Because of ethical concerns surrounding stem cells, there are laws put in place by the FDA. This leads me to my next question. Should the FDA regulate stem cell therapies? Currently, there are over 700 clinics in the United States that offer unapproved FDA treatments that can cause harmful side effects such as infections, chronic pain, and even death. I believe that the FDA should regulate these treatments because they'll be able to identify any dangerous products that shouldn't be offered to the public. There is only a select number of FDA-approved stem cell treatments, and scientists are still researching stem cells and their properties. So with this, approval by the FDA can take years, and the laws put in place can create restrictions to the scientists for their research.
The two questions that I researched in the futuristic lens were, what will the future look like for the orthopedic field? I found that the orthopedic field is the highest expectancy and has the highest success rate in the future. they have multiple different therapies, including blood transplants, joint repairs, multipotent, and migration. But their main one was technology. Technology is going to take over the future, especially in the medical field, starting with the orthopedic field. There's a few concerns and hesitations considering there isn't too many trials or tests that have been run so far with technology, but they are starting to come into hospitals and starting to become a little bit more accessible to the orthopedic fields. Along with these concerns and hesitations, it is a little bit harder for doctors inside of these orthopedic fields to make it a little bit more safer and to convince their patients and nurses and other colleagues that this is a safe and effective treatment for any orthopedic concerns or issues that come along. Many of these trials have not been approved to begin by either the FDA or the hospital board, which makes it a little bit harder for them to get the technology, but they are advancing the technology every day and researching more into the technology, which is making it a little bit more so people know more about it, which is causing more hospitals to allow it into their hospitals. The second question I researched was, will there be human cloning, blood stem cell transplants, future laws, or regenerative medicine or human cloning in the future? I found that there will be a little bit of this, but there won't be as much as the orthopedic field of technology. There will be blood stem cell transplants and future law changes, mainly with the FDA. The law changes will be happening because they are finding more trials and tests to run, which is causing the FDA to become a little bit more comfortable and willing to change the laws. Most of these therapies also don't use the full stem cell. They remove the tissues from the stem cell, which is making it easier for regenerative medicine to develop into the future. And then the human cloning, the FDA will not approve this stem cell, and there isn't really a projected, they don't project that they will approve that in the future, considering there are so many safety issues with it, and scientists don't feel comfortable with it. This is a graph showing that so it starts in the past and then it goes all the way up to 2030, and it's going in billions of dollars that the government will be giving to the FDA and researchers to continue the research and continue developing new therapies for the future. So adult and induced pluripotent, adult stem cells have the highest rate, mainly in the technology. Which is the dark colored, they are going up every single year and every day. And then the induced pluripotent and the very small embryonic stem cells have the smallest growth. You can kind of barely see the embryonic stem cells. And the human embryonic stem cells have a little bit of growth, but it will grow as the future comes, especially with technology developments. So in 2030, it's a little bit bigger, but not as big as the adult stem cells. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right. Elie, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
My team's resolution made me consider my counter-arguments a little bit more because my lens was very controversial and it could have been interpreted either way. So basically my research was kind of tying into the ethical part of it and how there's so many different aspects to stem cell research. And I saw how stem cell therapies could be unethical because of my group's discovery in their own research. And it kind of just made me consider my counter argument a little bit more.
Okay. Sylvia, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that you identified?
So I said that Elie's research had the most impact, and I thought that getting the ethical perspective kind of just gave us more of like a well-rounded opinion, because we got to learn more about like not purely from a science standpoint. We just kind of got a more of a well-rounded perspective and understanding, and it also impacted all of our lenses because, for example, in her paper, she was talking. This is a quote from the Harvard Stem Cell Institute, but she said, "I want to understand the topic more. Are HESCs considered 11% of blastocysts extracted from the embryo to use in stem cell research is not actively growing or implanted inside a woman's uterus?" And I thought it was a new way of looking at it, and it supported my scientific perspective. So I thought that knowing that and being able to connect with her on that helped my research.
Okay, thank you. Lauren, describe an argument from, if you had another team member, what other perspective or limitation could they have researched that would have made a useful contribution to your work?
I said social. We did have Marcella researching that at the beginning, and what she had told us mainly about like equality within the research made me wonder, and it was very interesting to me because I didn't know that there was equality issues and that scientists and doctors weren't allowing different races to be accepted for some of these like trials and tests that they were going to run. So I thought that was very interesting, and it made me want to research into it a little bit more. So if we had another person doing this, I would take Marcella's standpoint with the equality, just because I want to know how that affected the society and affected mainly like the ethical point too. Even.
Okay, thank you. Another round of applause.